And HOA Karen thought she could ban my sweet grandma from the local market, but what she didn't know is that I own the place. My grandma was the kind of person who found happiness in the smallest of routines. For her, visiting the local market every Saturday wasn't just about buying groceries, it was her ritual, her little adventure, and her way of staying connected with the world outside her home. She loved strolling down the stalls, chatting with the vendors who always saved the best fruits for her, and bargaining gently with a smile that no one could ever refuse. For her, that market wasn't just a place of trade, it was a place of belonging. She had walked those aisles for years, long before new rules, new people, and new authorities tried to turn the neighborhood into something exclusive and cold. But that morning, the peace of her routine was shattered. Standing near the gate, arms crossed with an air of authority, was Karen, the self-proclaimed enforcer of the Homeowners Association. Everyone in the community knew her for her sharp tongue and relentless need to control what wasn't hers. She wasn't a vendor, she wasn't an owner, and yet she behaved as if the market existed under her personal command. As soon as my grandma stepped forward, Karen blocked her way. "You can't shop here," Karen declared in a loud, cutting tone that immediately drew the attention of nearby shoppers. My grandma, confused but still gentle, held her little cloth bag close and asked softly, "Why not? I've always come here. The vendors know me." Her voice was steady, but her eyes carried the weight of confusion. She had done nothing wrong, and yet she was being stopped as though she was an intruder. Karen, unwilling to be reasonable, raised her voice so everyone could hear. "This market is for members only. We don't just let anyone in. Go home." Her words dripped with arrogance, and she didn't care that she was speaking to an elderly woman whose only crime was trying to buy her usual vegetables. The scene became a spectacle. Vendors looked uneasy, some tried to signal Karen to let it go, but she stood firm, feeding off the power she felt in that moment. My grandma tried once more, almost pleading now. "Please, I've been shopping here for years. I won't cause trouble. I just need a few things." Her humility should have softened anyone's heart, but Karen smirked, enjoying the authority she thought she held. "Rules are rules," she said mockingly, before adding, "If you don't like it, shop somewhere else." The cruelty of that moment was unbearable. My grandma's shoulders slumped, her hands trembling as she gripped her empty bag. Her eyes filled with tears. Not just from being denied groceries, but from the humiliation of being treated like she didn't belong in a place that had been part of her life for so long. Slowly, she turned away, walking back down the street, each step heavy with the weight of public shame. And as she left, Karen stood there proudly, as if she had accomplished something meaningful, when all she had done was break the spirit of a kind old woman who simply wanted to be part of the community. Karen's arrogance wasn't something new to the neighborhood, but that day at the market, it reached a level that stunned even the vendors who had witnessed her antics before. She thrived on control, on making rules where there were none, and on acting like the neighborhood belonged to her. She wasn't elected by anyone, yet she wore her HOA title like a crown, treating herself as the final authority over every street, park, and even the local market. It wasn't just about order or discipline for her, it was about power, and she exercised it whenever she found a chance, especially on people she thought were too weak to push back. When my grandma tried to reason with her, Karen saw it not as a plea, but as an opportunity to showcase her dominance. She raised her voice louder than necessary, repeating the same phrase over and over, "Members only, members only." She wanted the words to echo in everyone's ears, a reminder that she was the gatekeeper. My grandma's quiet and respectful tone didn't matter to her. If anything, it made her feel stronger, as though humiliating someone kind and harmless proved her own importance. The vendors, who had known my grandma for years, tried to speak up. One of them, a fruit seller with kind eyes, said gently, "She's been shopping here for as long as I can remember. She's no trouble. Let her through." But Karen snapped her head around and glared. "If you want to keep your stall, you'll follow the rules. No exceptions." The vendor lowered his gaze, not because he agreed, but because he knew how vindictive she could be. Karen had this way of bending rules to suit herself. If a wealthy-looking newcomer came by, she welcomed them with open arms, smiling and pretending to be gracious. But if it was someone like my grandma, modest, soft-spoken, carrying only a cloth bag instead of designer totes, she treated them like they were beneath her. It wasn't about rules at all, it was about image. Karen wanted to reshape the market into something exclusive, a place where only people she approved of could shop, where she could flaunt her control. As the crowd began to whisper, Karen's posture grew even stiffer. She enjoyed the attention, mistaking the shocked silence of others for respect. In her mind, she was protecting the standards of the community. She didn't care that my grandma had lived in that neighborhood longer than she had, or that the market was never meant to be restricted. All she cared about was asserting her authority in the most public way possible. My grandma, humiliated but still holding on to her dignity, tried one last time. "Please, I just need to buy a few vegetables." Her voice was thin, almost breaking, but Karen only scoffed. "Not my problem. Rules are rules. Go somewhere else." The words dripped with scorn, and then she turned her back as if dismissing a beggar. That moment captured everything about Karen's arrogance. She wasn't protecting the market. She wasn't enforcing real rules. She was feeding her ego at the expense of an elderly woman who deserved kindness and respect. To her, it wasn't enough to deny access, she needed to make sure everyone saw who was in charge. And for my grandma, that made the humiliation 10 times worse, because the cruelty wasn't private. It was a performance, staged by someone who wanted nothing more than to prove her dominance. When I heard what had happened to my grandma, I felt a storm rise inside me. She came home that day with her little cloth bag still empty, her shoulders heavy, and her eyes red from holding back tears. This was a woman who had lived her whole life with dignity, who never asked for more than respect, and yet she had been treated like she didn't belong in a place she loved. Listening to her recount the humiliation shattered something inside me. And then, as her words replayed in my mind, a realization struck me with sharp clarity: the market Karen had claimed authority over, the very place she had banned my grandma from, was mine. It wasn't always mine. Years earlier, when the opportunity arose to invest in a community space, I jumped at the chance. The market had been struggling then, and I wanted to revive it, not just as a business, but as a gathering place for neighbors. I worked behind the scenes, repairing stalls, making deals with vendors, and keeping things running smoothly. Most people didn't know who the real owner was. I preferred it that way. To me, it wasn't about recognition, it was about preserving something meaningful for the community. But now, that same quiet decision had become a weapon against the arrogance that had humiliated my grandmother. Karen had no idea she was trying to wield authority in a place where her voice carried no weight. She thought she was untouchable, that her self-appointed power as HOA head gave her control over everyone and everything. But the truth was, she had no control here. The irony was almost poetic: she had banned the grandmother of the very person who could undo her every word. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. My grandma's humiliation wasn't just an insult to her, it was an insult to me, to the vendors, and to the very values the market was meant to uphold. I had built it to be open, welcoming, and inclusive. It wasn't designed for exclusive members or elitist control. It was meant to serve people like my grandma, who found joy in the simple act of buying fresh vegetables and greeting familiar faces. The twist burned in my chest like fire. Karen didn't just pick on any elderly woman that day. She picked on my grandma. She had crossed a line she didn't even know existed. And the thought of it made me determined not to let her cruelty go unchallenged. I knew I couldn't undo what my grandma had felt that day, the humiliation, the tears, the way she walked home defeated, but I could make sure it never happened again. I could make sure that Karen learned, in the most public and undeniable way, that she had no authority in a place she had tried to claim. The market wasn't hers. It was mine. And the next time my grandma walked through those gates, it wouldn't be with her head lowered in shame. It would be with me by her side, ready to remind everyone who truly had the final say. The next morning, I didn't let my grandma go to the market alone. I walked beside her, her cloth bag in hand, determined to make things right. She was hesitant at first, still stunned from the humiliation, but I reassured her with a calm firmness: "Don't worry, Nanny. Today will be different." She didn't know exactly what I had planned, but she trusted me, the way she always had. As we approached the entrance, the vendors noticed us right away. A few of them offered hesitant smiles, but there was tension in the air. They knew Karen wouldn't stay silent if she saw my grandma return. And sure enough, there she was, standing tall near the gate like a guard dog that believed she owned the yard. The moment her eyes fell on my grandma, her lips curled into that familiar smirk, the one that said she was ready to enjoy another display of false authority. Well, she drawled, stepping forward, blocking our path just as she had before. Didn't I make myself clear yesterday? Members only. I won't repeat myself again. She glanced at the people nearby, as if inviting them to witness her dominance once more. The arrogance in her tone was sharp enough to cut. But this time, my grandma didn't speak. I did. Stepping in front of her, I met Karen's gaze directly. My voice was steady but loud enough for everyone around us to hear. You don't need to repeat yourself, because this ends right here. This is my market. The words seemed to hang in the air. Karen blinked, caught off guard, then forced a laugh. Your market? Don't be ridiculous. This belongs to the community, and as HOA president, I decide who comes and goes. I took a step closer, not backing down. You're wrong. This isn't your playground, and you don't decide anything here. The vendors rent from me. The land belongs to me. And you, I pointed squarely at her, have no authority to tell anyone, least of all my grandma, that they can't shop here. The crowd stirred. Some vendors nodded discreetly, others allowed smiles to creep onto their faces. The whispers began spreading fast. He owns the market? Karen's expression faltered. The color drained from her cheeks as the weight of the truth settled in. She had strutted around like a queen, only to realize she was standing in someone else's castle. She tried to recover, sputtering, well, even if you own it, there should still be rules. Standards. I cut her off. Yes, there are rules. Respect, kindness, fairness. And you broke every single one of them when you humiliated my grandma yesterday. So here's the only standard you need to understand: if you don't like seeing her here, you don't come here. It's that simple. The vendors clapped softly, some openly, as relief and satisfaction spread across their faces. My grandma clutched my arm, her eyes glistening, but this time, not from humiliation, from pride. Karen, on the other hand, had no choice but to back away, her authority crumbling in front of everyone. After that confrontation, the market never felt the same again, not for Karen, and certainly not for my grandma. The vendors, who had once been forced to stay silent under Karen's petty threats, seemed to breathe easier. That morning, one of them hurried forward with a basket of fresh oranges and handed it to my grandma with a smile. For you, he said warmly. Another vendor waved her over, insisting she take the freshest vegetables at the stall. It wasn't just about groceries anymore, it was about making her feel welcome, making her know she belonged. My grandma hesitated at first, still a little shaken from the memory of being pushed away just a day earlier. But as more people greeted her, offering kindness and respect, her shoulders straightened. She walked slowly down the familiar aisles, but this time, her head was held high. The market that had felt so hostile to her only yesterday had become a place of warmth again, because now everyone knew the truth. Karen didn't linger that day. She slunk off toward the corner, avoiding the stares and whispers that followed her. For the first time, she wasn't the center of control or attention. Her authority had been exposed as nothing more than a performance, and she had lost her stage. The satisfaction of that sight wasn't just mine, it was shared by the vendors and shoppers who had been under her shadow for too long. My grandma, though, didn't gloat. That wasn't who she was. She didn't rub her victory in Karen's face, nor did she raise her voice to prove a point. Instead, she showed exactly why she had always been so loved in the first place, with grace. She thanked every vendor who welcomed her back, smiled at the children running between the stalls, and even greeted strangers with her usual warmth. She didn't need to say a single word about what had happened, her presence, calm and dignified, said enough. From that day forward, things changed in small but meaningful ways. Vendors made a point to greet her first when she arrived. Shoppers nodded respectfully as she passed, whispering about the owner's grandma. And I could see how much it meant to her. Every Saturday became not just a shopping trip, but a reminder that she mattered, that she was valued, and that her place in the community was unshakable. As for Karen, her influence dwindled. People stopped taking her so seriously, realizing she had no real authority. The story of her banning the owner's grandmother spread quickly, turning her arrogance into the punchline of a joke. She never fully recovered from that humiliation, and perhaps that was fitting because she had inflicted it on others for far too long. Watching my grandma smile again as she carried her filled cloth bag home, I realized the confrontation wasn't just about putting Karen in her place. It was about restoring dignity to someone who had never deserved to lose it in the first place. The market belonged to her as much as it belonged to me, not because of ownership papers, but because she embodied the values it was meant to stand for: kindness, community, and respect. And from then on, everyone knew it.